Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are starting up the film journey again. And this time, we are have my good friend Bob with Bob's Blu-rays. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, yeah. So we actually met almost a year ago, finally, and it's been long overdue. So, how you been, and what's been going on your channel?
Yeah. I've been good. Like you said, met about right around summer of last year on Tim Talks Talkies channel. So shout out to him, good guy. Yeah, I've been busy, a lot of live streams. It's one of those things I enjoy creating content, but I feel like I'm better at being creative with live streams versus like just hitting record and me being in front of my own camera and just talking to myself. I don't know why it's so much easier when I got people with me. I just love hanging out with other movie lovers and talking about anything, even if you want to dive deeper than movies sometimes. So it's just fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think interacting with outside the camera is usually better because you can honestly you kind of forget it's there. You're just like, hey, I'm just talking to my friend. You know what I mean?
It's
So
a blast. It's a total blast doing it. I mean, that's why I love live streaming. I think so many people do. You get a taste of live streaming, and it's hard to like. It's once you do it once, you get that bug kind of.
I'm one of those weirdos who I have such an evolving schedule all the time that it's like hard for me to set like a scheduled time to to do something. But I wish I could do that because live streaming is a lot of fun, honestly.
Doing pre-recorded streams is so much, like you just said, though, so much easier because you don't have to be like, okay, we it's 8:25, we got to hit that live button, we got to go live. Like you could do it. I've done it before. I had a group of four people and they all lived in California. And so I live on the central side, like, Illinois. And we got together like 2 in the morning. It worked for them. It was midnight or whatever. That's what time they could do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So sometimes that works. And if you go live at that time, nobody's going to be watching, but it works for you. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and luckily we live in the time where that technology exists. Because like I know a couple years ago that kind of stuff really didn't exist on YouTube. I didn't feel like as much, so it's cool that that is kind of how the state of things are. But I love it. So
yeah, things have blown up for sure. I mean, we always talk about how difficult it can be to find a stream a night where somebody else isn't streaming. It's hard, but it's okay. People are going to overlap, especially in this community. But I try my best not to overlap with anybody. So but it happens. There's nothing you can really do about that.
yeah,
That's why
well,
it's nice because you got replays.
exactly, and you can watch it all over again. And I mean that's the great thing is like I miss live streams all the time. So but I try to jump in on occasion. So but yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of live streams, I wanted to kind of ask, what can the people who are watching this right now like expect if they went over to your channel?
Yeah, right now, oh geez, I'm running so many series that I probably get overwhelmed with that. But I am doing a series called Physical Media Collectors Hall of Fame. It's just for fun. Obviously, there's so many people that feel like there's people that don't have channels that have 50,000 movies, right? It's just a fun thing. I thought I created and somebody else kind of pushed me to do it. I really love the conversations. That is like KB does it. So many other people do it. I'm a huge fan of conversations one on one. And it's easy because I'm driving a lot. So I like to listen to them in the car. You don't have to watch it really. You could just listen like a
Like a
podcast.
podcast, yeah.
And so I really wanted to do that. And I was like, how can I do it differently and make it personal? So I was like, we really need a Hall of Fame in this community. And so I just started that for the Physical Media Collectors Hall of Fame. And I just do one-on-one conversations. I have some trivia segments in there. I have different people make videos personalizing it for that person. And it's a lot of fun. We have fun. It's usually like 2 hours long, just conversation, just hanging out. But it's fun. I get to pick on them a little bit and really just at the end of the day, that is all about paying like homage to each collector in this community and making the night about them and saying, hey, tonight's your night. Like we're gonna honor you and show you off. And so that's one of the things I do. I just started a new stream called Remembering. and we're going to remember actors and actresses that have passed away, because I feel like there's a lot of top 5 rankings out there for actors, directors, but sometimes actors and actresses that are no longer with us get forgotten, and I want to make sure we don't forget them. So
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to that Hall of Fame, I think that's awesome. I mean, that's a similar goal with a series like this that you're on here is really to spotlight, hopefully, the person's interactions with movies. And I love all those little other things like the trivia. I watched the one with Tim the other day, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more and seeing more of the community in those videos. And if you ever get a chance, I would like to add into that line.
oh, for sure. I would love to have you on. And I think that's the big thing too, is with it, when you do live streams, one of my biggest goals is to make it fun for the chat. I want people to smile. I know when I'm in a chat, I want to have fun, right? And when you make it interactive, it's fun for the chat because now they get to chat and comment and smile and have fun and guess the trivia for themselves or something like that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I'd love to get you on, definitely. Yeah, it'll, I'm trying to do one every 2 weeks. I don't want to overwhelm myself because I do put a lot of work into them. I don't just like to just click live, and so there's a lot of work that goes in. So one every 2 weeks is pretty much all I can handle. So that's kind of how I do it right now. But yeah, definitely.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's a good way to do it too, because you get to focus on other things, and because you have other things going on your channel. You also need to watch movies, right? So, and and all that other stuff. But speaking of watching movies, I guess I would segue to the next point. What have you been currently watching? Like, what are the last couple of days or so in movies?
I know I was just talking about live streams, but one of the things I like about live streams when you're either going to be in a live stream or hosting a live stream is you get like a theme to do. So right now Tim's doing his top 25 community stream,
I plan
and
on making a video.
yep, yeah, and so I've been going through 90s movies for that. I got a Paul Walker stream coming up, so I've been binge watching a lot of Paul Walker movies. So really whatever stream I'm gonna be on or something going on in the community, that's what I'll be watching, is like whatever themed month or something like that. If it's Paul Walker stream, okay, Paul Walker movies. So
What are some gems, like some '90s gems that you've seen recently? I guess then, like maybe
most
it could be on that list, but you don't have to give me numbers.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of them are rewatches. I've been rewatching stuff that I know is borderline going to make my top 25, and so I'm trying to rewatch it to see if it will. I watched Daylight, Cliffhanger, Can't Hardly Wait, She's All That. A lot of those cheesy 90s movies, seeing if they're going to make my list. And then I've got my ones that'll be at the top. I'm not rewatching those because I know where they stand, I know where they'll be. But yeah, there's a lot of those ones. She's All That is fun. A lot of these that are just littered with the 90s, but I grew up and I was born in 91, so I was like 10, 11 years old when these were coming out, 9, 8, and it was
Right.
just a perfect age for me. They don't quite hold up as well because they're obviously littered with the 90s, but it is a blast to hang out and watch them.
Yeah. Well, I'm a '92 baby, so I know exactly the same thing that you went through. Like, I grew up a lot with a lot of the movies in this time period. So, um, I still watch things like Billy Madison, and I freaking love it, and I can't get enough of it. But it's definitely a '90s movie, you can tell. So,
I love when he's like he takes his shirt off and he's like, "That is correct."
yeah, oh
Um,
yeah, Chris Farley.
yeah, Chris Farley, yep, and
Yeah,
he's like he bites his lip and he shakes his head. Yep, I love that.
yeah.
Exactly. Yep, that's
We
exactly.
literally just need to just talk about that the whole night. That'd be a lot of fun. Um, but well, cool, man. I'm glad that you're jumping in on that '90s thing, and I definitely am. I'm thinking about my list. I'm going to make a video soon myself. I probably will do it this weekend. So, um, but this will come out a little bit after that. So hopefully people will be able to watch both of our '90s videos. So, um, but transitioning to here, usually this is the first question I like to ask people, but I always like to, just kind of get to what you're doing currently. But What do you remember your earliest movie memory? Like, do you have like a first memory that you have watching
You're
movies?
right. I talk about it quite often. Some of my friends pick on me because they're like, "Oh my God, he's going to talk about Anaconda again." But look, I grew up with, so that was 97. I think it was like April of 97. So I was born in July.
You're like
So I
6?
wasn't even 6 years
Oh,
old.
not even.
I was 5 years old at the time Anaconda came out. But I had remembered seeing like Lion King and some other ones, but I was probably three because I think Lion King's like 94. So
Yeah.
I don't remember even seeing any of those movies that much at all. So my first memory had to be Anaconda. It was PG-13. My dad took me to go see it. It was the coolest, the 60-foot snake. Just actually doesn't look that bad, the CGI either. I don't think so. Like rewatching that the other day. And it was just so much fun. And that really is how I fell in love with movies. And then after that, it was the first rated R movie I got to see because back in the day, and still think today, you have to be 7 years old to even get into a rated R movie, which you could lie, because a 7-year-old doesn't have an ID. But my dad, it was like a treat for me, so he took me to go see Blade, which was my first R-rated movie. I believe it was 98, and I think yeah, because that was like August, and I was 7 years old at the time, and it was really cool. And so my dad and I like are super close, and unfortunately don't see him too much anymore. We try to hang out about once every 2 weeks, still watch movies together, and it's on me to like find something he hasn't seen and he'll enjoy because it's late at night. If I pick something slow or boring, he'll fall asleep. But so it's a lot of fun, just still almost 30 years later being able to watch movies with my dad still. It's a blast. It gets me emotional even thinking about it. But yeah, I mean I wouldn't, we all have moments as we get older where we view film differently, or maybe this is the movie that made me fall in love with movies, then this is the one that made me fall in love with horror, this is the movie I saw with my wife or something like that, it might be. But for me it was really that, and then in high school film class changed the way I viewed film, and I fell in love with camera angles and stuff like that. So, and like single takes, like Death Sentence is another one where it's just a single shot, like 1917. I mean, stuff like that's obviously not a single shot, but they edit it
Looks
so well
kind
you
of
can't
like
even
it.
tell exactly, and it's so perfect. Like that is it's just amazing. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, well, tell me more about this high school experience. What were some of those things that kind of popped off to like where like obviously seeing the different techniques just behind the camera and what you're seeing. Is there like any particular movies or like people around you? I know like you were saying your dad obviously
Yeah.
had gotten you started off, but what about that time period that like really
It's
spoke to you?
like Tim is a huge fan of older movies, and I don't watch a ton of older movies. Like I love the 80s, probably one of my favorites, 90s, of course. And 70s are good, but I never really dived too much into 60s and before. But film class kind of changed that for me because we watched like a lot of the talkies, the silent films, and I got Tim Talks Talkies on the mind, and I'm saying that now. But no, it was silent films, Charlie Chaplin, and so we watched like City Lights and a few others. I can't remember which ones, but Public Enemy, I believe, was another one from like 1931. James Cagney, is that
Cagney, yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah. And then like On the Waterfront, I remember my film teacher's favorite movie being The Graduate, and like Some Like It Hot we watched. I loved Rebel Without a Cause. I can't wait for the 4K to come out so I could revisit that. Psycho was another one. So all those movies, those are what we watched. And I would have probably, I don't know if I would have, like now knowing people and seeing movies get 4K releases, sure, but I don't know that I would have ever seen Rebel Without a Cause or anything like that. Or, well, Psycho, sure. But yeah, there's a lot that I probably would have missed out on and were really good films. And like I said, changed the way I viewed films. We didn't dive into like CGI and practical effects because we weren't watching anything. Well, yeah, it was older films anyways without CGI and stuff. But so when people talk about CGI and practical effects today, I don't like, I don't have the knowledge on that stuff. but camera angles were always my thing. So like low angles and understanding, okay, if the shot is a low angle shot, they're showing the dominance of the character, or a high angle shot, and so on and so forth, and long shots and pan shots. And there's reason and meaning behind a shot. And I was like, this is crazy stuff getting into it in film class, but having to study it and write a review and talk about the shots, and you get graded on it. It was just so cool. I loved it. I really had a like it reinvigorated my love for movies. It reminded me, it didn't remind me because I love movies. It changed the way I viewed movies and fell in love with movies. So like my dad, like we dig deep. When I'm watching a movie with my dad, he likes to break it down, as he calls it. And some people are like, okay, I watch a movie and it's over and that's it, and I let it go. Me, I love talking about a movie. I could talk about it for a week later, and I just love breaking it down, dissecting a film piece by piece. I love it. It. I'm a hands motion guy, but you could probably see the smile on my face, the joy, the passion. I hope I can. Like, I hope you could see it when I speak about movies, because that's how I feel about movies. I just love them so much. They really just they've impacted my life at times. You know, I always say movies have the power to impact people, and unfortunately for the bad sometimes, but um I love movies because they have the power to change and inspire me, like Creed or Rocky movie or something like that. And then sometimes I just come across a movie that a friend recommends, like a movie called Disconnect, and I watched it, and I sat there and the credits rolled and I was in tears, not just because it was sad, but I was just overwhelmed by what I saw on the screen and the art and how beautiful the movie was. And not everybody will agree. Some people probably haven't even seen it, but that is one of my favorite films of all time. And I had never heard of it, and it was recommended to me by a friend.
I need to see it still. I haven't seen it, so I will add it to the list because that's awesome.
That's such a fun thing, right? It was when we're in streams or anything, you watch people's videos and somebody recommends a movie. That's what I love about this community. So many people, when they recommend something, they actually watch the movies you recommend, or vice versa.
I know. Unlike in real life when you have your friends, outside the community who aren't as like obsessed with this thing that we are, and you're like, yeah, like what are some recommendations? I'm always hesitant. I'm like, I'll give you like one or two because I could overwhelm you, but a lot of the times they don't even follow through with the one or two sometimes. So it is kind of cool to have a space where people, you say something, and like that's the thing that's always blown me away just by being on the platform like this, like not even in a live stream, but even like just in a video. Like I might have picked up some random thing, and then in the comment section, like someone's like, it's like, you know what, you've convinced me to get it, or at least check it out. And then they check it out, and then they either love it or hate it. Most of the time, hopefully they enjoy it, and that's usually what I've been getting. But it is crazy how that happens.
I never, and I tell people, please recommend away. And if I hate a movie you recommend to me, even if I pay for it and it's $50 and I find it out of print, because I love to own the physical copy, I'm not a streaming guy. And I tell people, like, the whole point to me of recommending movies, part of the point is when you recommend 10 movies, it's actually a new series I'm going to be starting on my channel. People are recommending 10 movies to me. I'm going to go through, watch them. I'm not going to tell them if I like them or not. I'm going to do the live stream, and I'm going to start with number 10, ranking them, and I'll give my
Oh, that's
start.
cool.
And then they'll get to be like, oh, I hated that one, or why would you hate that? That's my favorite one, or something. And so they'll get to be like, your taste sucks, or like have fun with me and poke fun as I go, be like, do you even, you know what I mean? Like they'll get to poke fun and I'll be like, I just didn't like it, or I loved it. And they're gonna be like, if this is your 10, what's your number one? And it's cool because the chat won't know what's coming after it. They'll be like, oh, so I'm not gonna tell anybody what the 10 movies he recommended to me are. You gotta wait for me to go through 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on and so forth. But I had a buddy I mentioned with the disconnecting, he's done 5 like watch lists for me. So I started doing this years ago, and I do it on Letterboxd, and he's written 5 watch lists, each with like 24 titles. So over 100 movies he's recommended. Some I hated, and some I gave like a half star to and couldn't stand. And and then there was some that ended up in my top 50 favorite films of all time. I mean, so many good ones. Nocturnal Animals he
Ooh,
recommended to
yeah,
me.
great movie.
excellent movie. I mean, Smashed was another one about addiction, and that movie hit home and was
Oh
very,
yeah, with Aaron Paul.
yes, Aaron
Yeah,
Paul,
that's a
Mary
good movie.
Elizabeth Winstead, I believe, right? That's her
Mhm.
name. Or yeah, I think that's her name.
That's
Yeah,
it. Yep.
yeah. And that was just a very emotional movie. I love films about addiction. So I just, yeah, like, and he's recommended all those, and those are movies I never would have watched a day in my life if it wasn't for him. So I can't express enough if you're watching this video, and I hope you are. If you've made me a watch list in the past or ever recommended movies to me, like Tim recommended Bad Words with Jason Bateman,
Yeah,
and
fun movie.
I love that movie. It's
Yeah.
hilarious. And he's like, it's offensive. And I was like, nope, I'm okay. I'm not easily offended. So I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean that yeah, that's what's amazing about this place and hope I hope people, recommend us some movies down in the comment section, please. We'll do the favor and we'll keep giving it back. So, um I was going to say, moving past that high school experience, was there any moments kind of right after that, they kind of in your like young adult years where like it just proliferated a little bit more, or like were there any key moments that like stuck out where like, okay, I want to pursue something related to this?
Yeah. And let me say, like, right now, the questions he's asking, if you're in the chat or watching this, and this is to you too, I'm really like loving the questions, this conversation, because it's a lot more personal than just surface level, if that makes sense. And that's not calling anybody out, but a lot of times we just talk movies,
Hmm.
and this is really personalizing it. So I'm loving this conversation. Thank you for having me on. I know I'm saying that in the middle of the stream, whatever. I'm unusual. If you're watching this, you don't know who I am. That's how I am. But yeah, so I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to work right out of high school. I hated school, I dropped out of college, all that stuff. But eventually I went back, and then I like dropped my classes again, went back, and I've done all that. But eventually I finally found out what I wanted to do. And when I did that, I like took a film class at one point and in college, but I didn't. I was dropping all these classes, and so I was like, why am I going to stay? I wanted to stay for the film class, but I dropped all my other classes at the time, and so I dropped out of that one too. So no, there was no. I took a brief class in college for it, but no, it, I just I kind of like outside of high school, I kind of learned through the movies, if that makes sense, and other people teaching me about movies. And that's such so cool. When I hate a movie, I'll ask somebody who's recommended it to me, or if I hate a movie that's widely loved, I'll be like, hey, what did you like about it? And sometimes people explaining it to you, you might have missed something, and you might be able to go back and watch it in a different light or look at something differently, and you might feel differently. You might still hate it, but you like, this might hate, some people in the chat might get pissed off. Like I didn't like Black Christmas, the original, and I went back, rewatched it, and I liked it a bit more. I did, but I still didn't really like it.
Gets the phone call right in the beginning.
I
Oh,
don't know, it just didn't work for me. But that's the thing too, is people who get offended about somebody else's taste in movies. I'm like, don't do that. Look, nobody's out here to offend you. They're just giving you their opinion on a movie. If they don't like it, it's their opinion. They're not out here to disrespect anybody, and I'm sure not. And I'm glad you love it. Like, I'm glad that something I hate is out there for somebody else, you know. And I truly believe that no matter what movie you're watching, somebody out there is going to enjoy that movie.
yeah. And I mean, obviously, I can only speak for myself, but I genuinely feel that a lot of the times, a lot of the people I meet in this community and any people, who I interact with in the comment section and whatnot, and just people who like things, I genuinely think we just like movies. And like, anytime I blind buy something, which is a lot of the times, I blind buy stuff all the time. Um, when I watch it and maybe something doesn't click like you're saying, I still find something valuable about it. You know what I mean? So every time I watch something, I usually try to find some kind of it's almost like innate. I don't know. It's not something I try to do just like, hey, I put effort into this, in some capacity. So I want to, I guess, for lack of a better word, get my money's worth, or at least have some kind of weird connection to it, even if it didn't really connect with me, like I liked something about it. And so a lot of the times, most of the movies I see, I'm like, I genuinely think, even if it's trash, I'm like, I still had a fun time in some capacity.
Some trashy movies are fun. I mean, some are, they say
Yeah.
so bad it's good kind of thing. But
Right.
like we were talking about this briefly before this, The Girl Next Door, I just watched it with my buddy Mizzy, shout out to him, and we loved it and we were having fun. We were quoting it back and forth. And but not only that, like a lot of people nowadays would hate something like that, and maybe even back then, but it's there was a lot more to that movie, even rewatching it for the 50th time, that I found that I enjoyed about it. I was like, man, this movie's like, it's got something there. It's not just your raunchy comedy or something like that, which I love those types of movies, but it's almost like coming of age, and he learns a lot through the movie too. If anybody out there has seen Girl Next Door, people are thinking I'm talking like it's Shawshank Redemption. No, I'm not doing that, but it's a good movie, and I think there's definitely everything out there has more to it. You know how when people say shut your brain off, just enjoy it, or watch a Scream movie, and they're like, shut your brain off and enjoy it and watch for the kills. I got a buddy Cody, and he's like, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the trauma from Sam's side, and like what she has to go through with the people on the internet saying that she's the real killer and stuff like that. So struggling with that. And I thought that was so cool that he was able to find that in a movie like Scream, because most people wouldn't talk about something like that. So I love being able to dive deep into movies that most people would just find maybe surface level or just there for entertainment value, and be like, nope, there's more here if you really want to dig deep. And some people would say you're digging too deep. I don't say that. I think perfect. I'd say perfect. I'd say it's awesome. Let's dissect it. Let's go deep.
And would you say like a lot of that comes from mainly from like, like watching those movies with your dad and like having those conversations? Do you think that kind of started off where how that has come into where you're at now, where you do like
Yeah.
those deeper conversations?
I mean, the term movies that made us, right? Like I I think of my dad made me. So I'm not like there's certain actors I might not get into. Like I didn't grow up watching Jim Carrey. My dad wasn't a big Jim Carrey fan. The world loves him. I'm the only one who doesn't watch really many of his movies and find him funny. But I was shaped, like, don't get me wrong, I have my own opinion, but as a kid I was shaped by what my dad had me watching and stuff like that. So I loved horror movies because he introduced me to Scream when I was like 7 or 8 years old. It's my number one favorite horror film of all time. And it's like, if I had watched Halloween first or Chucky first, would that be my favorite horror movie of all time? But Scream is, and it's probably in large part because it was the first one I saw. But I also think it's an incredible horror movie. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I think my dad, being somebody who likes to dissect movies, like as he calls it, dissecting a movie, and it's carried over. I love being able to do that, and with anything, and that's why I actually started a series with Tim. Actually, we called it um mo- uh what uh what it means to us. Jesus, when you're thinking of stuff, you just, but yeah, what it means to us, it's called. And so we started with It's a Wonderful Life, and him and I broke it down with four other people, and we talked about what it meant to us, because Tim was on a stream with me, and he was talking about suicide and depression side of that movie. And somebody in the comment section made a joke, and I put the comment up, and then we didn't talk about it. We all laughed and started having a good time, but Tim didn't get to finish what he wanted to say, and I felt really bad. And so I reached out to him after, and I was like, "What if we did a live stream talking about this movie?" And we did, and now in a couple weeks we're going to be discussing The Whale and what it means to us. And I really try to personalize those streams by getting somebody on who can talk about something that really meant something to them in those movies. So like The Menu, I would love to find somebody who's a chef and discuss that movie, because I think the movie The Menu is also really deep elements in that movie that people don't maybe understand. And I think I have a lot to still learn from the movie The Menu.
Yeah. I really like how you like what you're saying is like I mean it goes back to what you were talking about near the beginning when you were talking about the Hall of Fame in preparation really is it seems like you genuinely put in some effort into whatever the theme or topic is or whoever you have on. You want to make sure that you're highlighting the right thing, and making it not just like a hangout, which it could just be a hangout, but you have some kind of purpose behind it. I think that's really awesome, and I think that's it carries over from what you've been doing. I guess since you were around with your dad watching Scream at the very beginning. Yeah, I'm excited to see more of that to unfold, man. So
I think it's very easy to hit go live, and I enjoy doing that. So Tim taught me a lot how to edit. I know I mentioned Tim a lot, but that guy has had a huge impact on me and my career, if you want to call that, as a YouTuber. And I respect the heck out of that guy. He's always been there for me. He helps me out. Does the thumbnails and live streams for me. He's a great guy. And so like I've really wanted to, when I do the Hall of Fame stream, like you said, personalize it, and I want to make sure everybody's having a good time. So I enjoy hitting go live, but as I learned how to edit and as I learned how to do more creative stuff, it's a lot of fun doing that stuff. And I never understood that. So I'd always, like, when I would record a video, just hit play, stop, and it's one take for me. And I love being able to like mess around with it, have intros now, and do different fun things that I would have never learned how to do if it wasn't for people like Tim teaching me how to do it. And so it's fun to have that conversation, like just hang out, like you said. And then there's sometimes where it's like certain streams you're like, no, let me put some work into this and really work on it. So even the remembering stream, I love top five rankings, and a lot of people do them. Even for that, I wanted to like make it personal. So I started the stream like we did Kelly Preston the first week. I started the stream with like a minute and a half just pictures of her and stuff like that. And then I would had some trivia in each round just to make it different than your typical top five. So everything I do, I try to put a little spin on and make it different, because at the end of the day, we're all talking about one theme, and that's movies.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that drives a lot of us, right, in this space in general. So it's cool to see the effort that's been putting out from honestly you and everyone, even the people who are just commenting or watching right now. I hope everyone's enjoying this. So, um, well, I want to circle back because I know you said you mentioned Scream as being your favorite horror movie. Do you have like other just the favorite movies of all time? Like you don't have to list your favorite movie of all time, just like some of your absolute favorites that
Well, I'm cool. I'm an open book, and I'm not like sensitive. I don't mind hurting people's feelings. Like if people are like, "Why is that your favorite film of all time? What about Godfather or Shawshank Redemption?" I love Shawshank Redemption, like Jaws or something popular, right? Love all those movies. I've actually never seen Godfather. That's like the movie that would shock everybody that I haven't seen. I need to get around to it because I want to see that. But my favorite film of all time is The Town. And I think Ben Affleck's a remarkable director, and it's such a great movie. It's so well directed. Like that's definitely my favorite film of all time. A movie called Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon. Probably not many people have seen. I
I haven't.
love it. There's a scene where there's like it's like a 2.5 or 3 minute single take shot, and single take scene, and they the way it's filmed, if you watch like the special features, they have somebody, because it goes multiple floors with the camera, they have somebody hand the person the camera on the other floor. Like they have, it's remarkable, and you could see it when it comes in the movie. You could see like the camera being, it's just remarkable the way they do that. It's awesome. That's one of my favorites. I love the movie Men of Honor. Backdraft means a lot to me. So like people are like, wow, he has a lot of newer movies, but this is what I grew up with. Like my dad showed me Backdraft when I was a kid, and I remember crying to death at the end of that movie. And just, I mean, they talk about movies that made us. So many of us, our favorite films of all time are probably things we grew up with, whether you think they're perfect films or not. I mean, those are movies that we grew up with, and that's why I always tell people, don't ever make fun of somebody for their favorite film of all time or what they love, because you don't know what they went through. Maybe somebody's favorite, now granted my dad's still alive, but what if somebody's favorite movie, not to get too dark here, they say Backdraft, and you're like, Backdraft, really? And the person's like, look, my dad was a firefighter and died in a fire. Like that movie now has personal meaning to them. It could be a addiction movie that nobody else knows, but what happens if addiction was a huge part of their family or their life growing up? And I'm an open book. I'll talk about it. Like addiction movies play a huge part to me because I have an addictive personality. I mean, look at my collection. Not only that, but I struggled with like things when I was a kid, and growing up, and then my dad did too. And so him and I, actually, one thing I want to do with my dad is get on a stream and talk about him and I, and like do a top five addictions movie. stream and talk about him and I and struggling with alcoholism when we like he was younger, and then when I was in my 20s, I struggled with it the way my dad did, and that's why I quit, because I was like, I I I could turn into what my dad was, and I had like an angry path when I drank, and so that was something I quit. Not to get all dark on here, so I apologize, but
No, not at
I
all.
love opening up and being like, it's something I've never done on YouTube, to be honest with you, but it's nice because I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to talk about struggles with addiction, because I think there's somebody out there that might be struggling, but might not be able to talk about it or isn't comfortable. But if I could help anybody out there or talk about it, and when you could tie it back into movies, it might bring people in, versus me getting on a stream and just talking about addiction. That's a little dark, but that's why addiction films mean so much. And then bullying films like Karate Kid and so many others meant the world to me, because I was bullied in high school because I was like 4'11" and I didn't hit a growth spurt until junior or senior year. So those movies like all mean something to me because I grew up with that attachment and then addiction when I was 21 and stopping. So all these movies have something there. And so that's why I tell people, don't attack or blame or judge somebody for what they love, because you don't know why they love it. You don't know what they went through that made that movie that personal to them.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it better myself. I think really when it comes down to it, and I always struggle with this. I don't know if you do yourself, but I always struggle usually when I maybe it's talking about some of your favorite movies, or maybe just a movie that like really affected you, but like you can never really describe or like explain how you got through that, or like why it means so much to you, because it I mean obviously the person you're explaining it to hasn't gone through that per se, and nobody I mean and that happens with everybody really, but that's it is such a crazily unique thing, but also at the same time, it is a genuinely human thing. To have it doesn't have to just be this medium, right? Obviously, there's keepsakes that people carry for different memories that they have with things associated with what happened in their life, and honestly, that's what makes life so rich, in my opinion. Is we all have these different things that we can associate or attach ourselves a little bit to. So honestly, I think it's really it's really great that people can be honest about that kind of stuff sometimes. And maybe I'm ranting now.
Oh, you're good. Even artists, music means a lot to people, right? Like you don't know, it doesn't have to be just movies, like you said. Um, I went to a concert a while back and I told the artist, there was two songs, and I told him my sister got me like a meet and greet. And I'm not super big into movies the way I am music the way I am movies. But my sister got me there, and I got to ask a question, and I asked him what the songs what was the meaning behind the songs, and I told him what they meant to me at a dark place in my life. They kind of almost saved my life. And I always tell people, words mean a lot. Words can destroy, they can also build up. But if you've been inspired by somebody, don't be afraid to let that person know, because you don't know what that person might be going through. But if you can tell somebody like, hey, Nate, um your review of this movie meant the world to me, it helped me in a bad place, or your conversation with this person, anything like that, what you don't know, Nathan might be struggling in that moment, or he might be in a great place, but you saying something kind to him and saying he inspired you could really change where he's at in his place in life. And never be afraid to let somebody know what they mean to you. Yeah, so honestly, I think just the biggest thing is respecting, obviously, respecting other people's tastes in movies. But if somebody has made a difference in your life, whether that be movies or anything, let them know. Like, even meeting a director, I think, is so important. You never know what a director or an actor, you know what I mean, meant to you. Like, I'm doing that Paul Walker stream in a couple weeks, and Paul Walker, like, I didn't cry when he died, and I know some people do when celebrities die. I don't know them personally, so maybe that's why. But Paul Walker like was probably the toughest celebrity for me when he passed because I loved the early Fast and Furious franchise, Joyride, and so many other Paul Walker movies. But I grew up with him. Like that was who I grew up on his movies. So letting actors, actresses, celebrities, you go to conventions. I'm not saying they're gonna hear what you say and it's gonna mean the world, but you never know. And just letting somebody know, hey, look, your movie and that acting, like he didn't get an Oscar for this, and he didn't even get nominated. But Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips, the end of that movie, is just some of the best acting I've ever seen. And he could be nominated every year, I swear. But yeah, Captain Phillips, like that, I was crying at the end of Captain Phillips, not because it was necessarily super sad. It was his performance and how like the trauma that he had gone through in the movie, you know. And so letting people know they make a difference, whether that be a celebrity or a friend or a YouTuber, let them know because you don't know what that person's going through. I know when I read those comments, whether it be hurtful words or like I try to block those ones out. So when the people say nice things like that really builds me up and means a lot. And it makes me want to keep going when you read stuff like that. And I've talked to other collectors out there, my buddy Fish, like he's talked about the comments meaning the world to him and so many other people. We love reading your comments. We
Yeah,
love
for
it.
sure. I do too.
Drop them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mean, you hit a lot of, amazing points. And I honestly, I think I would echo the same thing. Just, the things that keep us going, honestly, are really what means the most to us. And, that's what, hopefully, those little things that you don't even think about, like kind of what you're mentioning, where, maybe watching something like the last 10 minutes of Captain Phillips or something, um, it clicks with you. You know what I mean? Like most people maybe that one even like they're just like, yeah, I watched this movie with him, and like, yeah, it was a hard movie to watch because pirates and what had happened to him and all that stuff, and but but when you latch onto a moment, you're just like, okay, this hit home a little bit, um, and I don't know exactly, you can't really even explain it, but like those are those moments that like like remind you of like why how valuable these little things are. You know what I mean? So yeah,
But you just said can't even explain it. How many times do we watch a movie? It could be one of our favorite movies, and we'll be sitting there, and somebody will be like, "Okay, why do you love it?" And you're just like, it's just," and you just keep stuttering, and you're like, I don't have the words." You know, you're like, you love something so much, sometimes you can't even express why. You just love it, and sometimes it takes the words out of your mouth, you know, and I can, but sometimes you're just at a loss for words of why you love somebody or something so much.
yeah. I mean, I have one example that I've mentioned multiple times that maybe it's not something that I love. It's something that I have a deep trauma attached to it. But a ghost story with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. Um, I watched that at a very particular time in my life. It came out in 2016. So, um, and yeah, but like it, like I've only seen the movie once, and I have a movie poster of it, and I talked about it in like in when I was in college, and I wrote about it and what it meant to me when I watched it, and it all is associated with memories of the record store I used to work at. Um, and so it's these little things that I hope everyone has something that they've watched, and that they or at least read or whatever it is, some kind of medium that connects to them in a way that like has that indescribable thing that you just can't really explain.
Can you
So
explain to me what? Because I've heard of it, but what is it about?
so Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck are a couple. They are a pretty young couple. They live in a house in like a suburbs. Casey Affleck, one morning, gets hit and dies pretty like kind of right outside the home. And so Rooney Mara is like obviously dealing with the death of her husband. And then you see he's like like in Beetlejuice or even like Scooby Doo, like the bed sheet ghost, like then you start seeing Casey Affleck in view in the same location, but the camera just stays there, and it just stays in the anguish of like Rooney Mara like missing her husband missing this opportunity, and then it also just it's all about the space around them, and then it kind of just evolves from there. But that's kind of the premise of the story is really just sitting there with grief and dealing with, it's something that's traumatic and not knowing
Like
what to
you said,
do.
that meant a lot to you, that movie.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's hard for me to talk about it because it reminds me of my the job that I loved most that went away. So, um, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but there's a lot of cool things. But speaking of transitioning away from it, because I'm getting too close. Um, I was gonna say, I know you mentioned some of those favorite movies, and I know you mentioned several people involved in those movies. But do you have any favorite actors or actresses that you like to follow? I know that you hit on it with some of these Remembrance series. Maybe they're not your favorites, but at least they're people you want to recognize, and put forth, but and recognize.
Yeah. Uh, one of my favorite actresses, and she's probably not in any of my necessarily like my top 25 favorite films of all time. I just adore her. I love her to death. Is Naomi Watts. Ah, she's beautiful, but she's a great actress too. And I really feel like I wish I would have gotten to see her win an Oscar for The Impossible. She was incredible in that. That's a very good movie.
Hmm.
She's in a lot of good movies out there. An actor I love is Kevin Costner, and everybody kind of craps on this movie. Most of the my favorite films of all time, people will be like, really. I love the For the Love of the Game, For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner and Kelly Preston. So we touched on that, and yeah, I mean, so Kevin Costner is one of my favorite actors. He's been in a lot of movies that I love as well. But yeah, so those are a couple actors for sure. I like Ben Affleck, especially as a director. Some people really aren't too big of fans of him either. But yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't always have to be like an actor, but I think an actor or an actress definitely can suck you into a movie and be like, okay, I wasn't going to see this, but she's in it or he's in it, so I'll check it out. And even if I don't like it, like I'm going to enjoy watching him or her.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it with Tom Hanks, right?
Yeah,
So,
I love Tom Hanks. I mean, Forrest Gump, Castaway. I think Castaway is a masterpiece, just
oh,
beyond a masterpiece.
agreed. And it doesn't. It's weird how culturally relevant it was when it came out, and for a while afterwards. But it's really not talked about much anymore, which is crazy.
And see, Castaway, like I'll get into spoilers here, so if you haven't seen Castaway, I'm gonna kind of spoil the ending a little bit. But that scene is Meg Ryan, or it's not Meg Ryan. No, it's who's the actress? Dear God, I can't think of.
This is how long it's been since I've seen it, but I know the one he was married to.
Yes, yeah. And
Yeah.
why am I saying Meg Ryan? It's not Michelle Pfeiffer. But anyways, yeah. Uh, Helen Hunt. Thank you.
Uh,
That's it.
you're
So I'm an idiot. But I was like, somebody's gonna get mad if we don't get this. We got to get this, Nathan. um, but the end of that, like, so I'm a sucker for romance because my dad's always like, if there's a little bit of romance in movies, he likes it. And I'm single, like it's romance is fun to me because I get to like live kind of vicariously through these actors and actresses and these movies. And so it's fun. And but yeah, the end of that movie is heartbreaking because it's like she he comes back, but she's married, and it's just so emotional. And then we see him with the volleyball again at the end, and but he goes and it's almost like at the street, and I never thought about this kind of until just now. But he's at a crossroads. There's four, he's in the middle, and she's like, "Are you lost?" I think she says to him, the farmer, and the woman with the truck, I believe, and we're led to believe that might be her house, the one that he just left the package on. And we just that's how it ends. But it's like, where do you go from here? I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, but it's like
yeah, I
I
want to watch
never
it now.
really I never thought about it until having this conversation with you just now. But where does he go from there? Like where do I go from here? I was lost for four. I wasn't lost, but I was gone for 4 years. And I come back and the love of my life is married. What do I do? Where do I go from here? And that's such a intriguing, it's such a just Robert Zemeckis, just him and Tom Hanks, because you only get him and Tom Hanks. He's directing, Tom Hanks is all that we get. So to be able to do that, it's just a masterpiece. And you know how a lot of movies where you're stranded on an island or something like that, they'll go back and forth between the real life, what's happening. Not this movie. Like
No,
it's all Tom Hanks, and I love that though. I love that they're just like, listen, Tom, you're gonna be the, you know, you're on center stage, like it's all you.
90% of the movie, this is you. Yeah,
And to be able to make us all, the whole world cry when he loses a volleyball is remarkable directing and acting.
right. Yeah. Um, Something you spoke on at the end of that, talking about the crossroads part. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love and adore movies that have a really unambiguous ending, where it's just like it's just super open to interpretation. I know a lot of a lot of my friends and other people I've just talked to just outside this community mostly are hate it when a movie just like is open ended and doesn't have answers for them. But that's some of my favorite movies because it makes you think. It makes you think like, what's the next step? You know, like this ended on in a particular spot where it might have been like a very sad spot or a very scary spot, or like it just, or the camera just cuts away from something that's about to happen and you just don't even know what's going to happen. And um but yeah, I adore it, but I don't know what are your thoughts?
No, Tim's a fan of that. Big fan of those movies. So for me, it's hit or miss.
Sure.
For Castaway, it works wonders. And then there's some movies where I'm like, oh, I couldn't stand that ending. I haven't seen Black Phone yet, but I know like Tim has talked about his love for the fact that Black Phone doesn't answer all the questions.
Hmm.
It leaves it kind of, they don't need to explain everything. And a lot of people complained, I guess, about that. But I think we're getting a sequel to Black Phone. But I got to check it out. But yeah, so it just
Good
depends
movie.
on which movie it is and how it ends, what works for me. I do hate in TV shows when it gets canceled and we don't get a resolution. That always sucks. But yeah, in movies, it just depends on how it's done. I think Castaway's so perfect, and I don't think we need to know. And there's so many movies where it's like, oh, I don't want to spoil the ending of, but Disconnect, that's another one. The ending of Death Sentence is absolutely another one. Ambiguous ending. I mean, there's a lot. I'm trying to like look around my room almost. It's hard to think of off the top of your head, but there's definitely some movies out there where you're like, ooh, let's just, but that's leave it to open to discussion, right? I mean, so many times you're so many movies. I wish I could think of so many more off the top of my head right now. Maybe you have some. You're like, oh, this is one. I don't want to. This is big spoiler alert, but Buried with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah, right. Good movie.
But like I think that's pretty much a closed ending there. But that is one of the most intense. It's actually my favorite ending of all time in any movie. And people are like, "Wow, you're really dark." But I remember watching that, and I stood up off my seat in that moment. I wasn't even on the edge of my seat. I stood up, and I was just like, I was so engaged in it. I was like, "What is going to happen?" I mean, you got this dirt feeling. It's just perfect.
Yeah. No, it's unforgettable. And um yeah, there are now my mind's swimming honestly because I just want to start thinking about all the movies that like just have these The Gray is another one that always came to my mind, that ends on a way that yeah.
Wolves at the end and
Yeah.
that quote he gives. Ooh, goosebumps, chills.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
buddy Chris loves that movie,
I
and
do
he
too.
went into it blind, and he didn't anticipate liking that, and then he came out and he was in love with it.
Yeah. There's I mean there's so many, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, I know you mentioned Robert Zemeckis, obviously talking about with Tom Hanks and whatnot. Are there some like directors that you like to follow? You know that, or at least maybe some of your favorites that you give a lot more attention to, or if they're putting something out, they you know you might check out.
I'll forget somebody and I'll feel bad, but Wes Craven meant the world to me, having Scream being one of my favorite, movies growing up. Clint Eastwood, I hope he lives for another 20 more years. I can't imagine him being.
110 or something like that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because he's what, 93 or 94. So I was talking to Tim about this. Like, so many actors are getting older. This remembering series, like, unfortunately, at some point, Clint Eastwood's going to leave us, and I just don't want to think about that. But him, Gran Torino, so many of his movies I love and adore, and I loved him as an actor. I love him as an actor. And then there's a director, S. Craig Zoller. And do you know who he is?
It vaguely sounds familiar, but tell me more.
Brawlin' Cell Block 99,
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do know him. Yeah.
Bone
Bone
Tomahawk.
Tomahawk. Yep.
Yep. And
Dragged
one
across
is
concrete.
Dragged Across Concrete. Those are the three, and I'm still waiting for another one now because those three are like, bro. I don't want to say masterpieces. I don't want to throw that word out there loosely, but Brawl and Cell Block 99 is brutal and just it's a perfect movie to me. It is so good. So underrated. He is an incredible director. He does his own score and he does the writing, and it's perfect. He's so good. He is so good. Perfect. He also wrote the script for the new like Puppet Master Littlest Reich or Reek, and makes sense because it's a very gory movie. But yeah, he's so good. I love S. Craig Zeller.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next because I mean, I really liked Bone Tomahawk when it first came out, and so I did. I remember talking to people who, I mean, there's a lot of my friends outside of this space. I feel like I've said that phrase like 4 times today. Anyway, who always like came up to me, he's like, "Have you seen Bone Tomahawk?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, it isn't it brutal? Is like it just came out of nowhere at the end. It's just like, what?
Everybody talks about that Terrifier scene with the girl hanging upside down. But Bone Tomahawk, I think they can't, that they did it first. He did it first, and I think he did it even more brutal than Terrifier did. And you hear the bones crunching and everything. It just like
Mhm.
you said comes out of nowhere. And he reminds me, and another director I love so much is Quentin Tarantino, of course. But he reminds me of Quentin Tarantino with his long, extended dialogue and just even Dragged Across Concrete. I mean, it's 2 hours 40 minutes long. He could probably cut it, but for some reason, I was not bored. And there's so much dialogue. It's so well written and so interesting to watch. And I'm like 2 hours 40 minutes and mostly dialogue. I'm like, how am I going to enjoy this? But if you're good at writing, you can really engage your audience. I mean, just become engrossed in the movie. And I'm somebody who, when I was younger, I needed fast pace. I wanted to watch heads get cut off. I wanted to watch nudity as a kid, right? Because I was, just first learning about boobs or whatever, right? And blood and gore. But as I got older, I'm like, I don't need any of that stuff in movies. I'm like, cool if it's in there, but I could care less if there's nudity or gore. And now I'm like engrossed in dialogue and stuff like that sometimes. And it's so cool. And that's the change from being 10 years old and seeing your first boobs to being, 30 years old and now wanting to watch something with, you know, engaging dialogue.
Right. Now we are old men.
Yeah.
So, and now I guess we need to get a combination of both. Then, so that way we can remember our childhood and then also continue on as old men, I suppose. Um, I was gonna say, speaking of these directors, would there be like a director that you would want to work with at all? If you ever, if and when I say this, I mean like you don't have to be an actor in this movie. You can be an extra. You can be behind the camera or whatever. Would there be anyone you would want to work with? Like a almost like a what the bucket list kind of thing.
Am I allowed to say Wes Craven being
Yeah, of
passed
course.
away? He just the way, and I understand most people aren't going to crap on their boss essentially, um but he just seemed like such a good man to work with. The way Rose McGowan, Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and so many more, even the actress who played Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street, all of the way everybody who's ever worked with Wes Craven has talked about him. He seems so gentle and just fun to work with. Like he would be somebody, I mean, that I would love to work with. Like he would have loved to work with. I miss Wes Craven so much, and I would have loved to see him try Scream 5 and 6 as well because that was his plan. But Scream 4 didn't do well, and then he passed away, of course. So
I enjoyed Scream 4. I like the whole franchise, but that's just me. That's
yeah,
fine.
he's one to be an extra or anything in a Scream movie. It would have been so cool, but he just seems so cool and lighthearted and just easygoing. I also, I mean, keep in mind it was his first directorial debut. he started with pornography actually, but The Last House on the Left, and I think that's a very important movie. I think it's pretty good. And then I love The Hills Have Eyes, original one from '77. So Wes Craven's like definitely one of my favorite directors. I love John Carpenter, but I prefer Wes Craven to be honest.
What capacity would you work with Wes Craven? What would you want to do in there? Like be an actor or
Yeah, he could have had me be one of the opening kills in the movie. I don't care. Yeah, just let me work with Nev Campbell, please. I adore Sidney Prescott. I swear I was a kid and my parents were like, we need to get this kid help because I would just walk around like quoting Ghostface all the time and Sidney Prescott. I adored her. Um, but yeah, that would have been awesome. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Red Eye is a good one too. Nobody talks about. I feel like that's an underrated one that he directed. So, yeah, put me on the plane with Rachel McAdams. That would have been fun too.
well, man, I know I was gonna say like now I'm thinking because this is Scream adjacent, but I always I've been doing a lot of the was up
Okay, yeah, scary
Scream from
movie.
Scream from Scary Movie and with Ghostface, and so but if I was in a movie, I would want to do something really dumb with Wes Craven. But like it's almost like parodying Scary Movie in a Wes Craven movie, which he would have liked, I think.
Yeah. Put me in the records in the movie store with Billy, Stu, and Randy in that scene. Let me just hang out with them for a moment. Like that's so cool too. I love when movies go back to movie stores I thought, I mean, I know I've only seen Captain Marvel once, but being able to see Blockbuster again was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, I probably should have asked this earlier, but this makes me think of it right now. But like, when did your like love of movies become like this physical present? Talking about like the media store, going to Blockbuster, going to like your mom and pop video stores. You know,
For me, it was my dad collected VHS. So it started with VHS, and then I started buying VHS, getting them for Christmas and all that stuff. It's all I pretty much asked for. I had a huge VHS collection, so did my dad. And then DVD became a thing, and we started buying DVDs, both of us. And obviously, I lived at home. I was 10 years old, or 11 or 12 or whatever. And so, God, when DVD was around, was that I know the last VHS was kind of like 2005, History of Violence, I believe, was the one of the last ones. But so DVD probably started like what 2000, became bigger in 2002, three.
yeah, it really came to its own in like the early 2000s. Yeah.
So we got into it, and then I kept my dad in my VHS collection. He kind of gave it to me. He gave me all the DVDs, and at one point, I ended up selling all the DVDs, and I ended up all the VHS. I left with his ex-wife in a storage unit, and I actually just reached out to her, and she's like, "Oh, I got rid of those a long time ago." So it started with VHS, then DVD. But I was the kind of person like I sold all my DVDs at one point. So I've been when people ask me when have you started collecting since, oh God, before the 2000s. But I sold my entire collection at one point, got it back. I did this with like video games like three times, sold systems and all that stuff. But this, what you see behind me now, probably about 7 or 8 years since like 2015, 2016. It was like the It Follows Steelbook was like one of the first movies I had bought back and started collecting again. So, and that was $7, and now it goes for that was back in the day at Best Buy, 7.99, steel books all over the place, and now it's $50 on eBay. But um, yeah, the VHS and then DVD, and then my dad did not collect Blu-ray, and now he'll my dad's old school. Like he's he'll be like tapes. He calls these tapes. He's like, what tape? Well, he'll ask like, he's like, he's still buying tapes. Like, it's not tapes, they're 4K, Dad, but yeah, I'm still buying tapes, I guess.
They look a little different, and you don't have to rewind them, but
Yeah.
same concept, I suppose. Well, that's awesome, man. I was gonna say, kind of building on that, if you, and this is the toughest question I always like to ask at the end, and if you could describe your life in a movie, what title would you give it?
Oh geez. Uh, I don't know. I don't. Oh man, that's so hard. That's so hard.
Maybe that's it. I'm kidding.
So hard. Um, but yeah, I think of like if I could describe my movie. So horror is my first, like my favorite genre as a whole, probably.
Hmm.
But drama has my most favorite movies. So I enjoy watching horror, but it would probably be something to do with like addiction in sports because I like to be real and emotional and talk about something that might cause other discomfort for people. So I want to have a story, like you said, about my life. So I want it to be a true story then and be emotional and hopefully, one day leave a legacy behind too, right? That we always talk about that. So, I don't, I hope one day people will remember me and something good, not bad. I don't want to be, I all right, now I'm gonna get really dark, but you don't want to. You ever think about what people will say if you died and you had a funeral? What people would say about you when you're gone? Like that's something I definitely think about, and I'm like, I hope there would be people that would be there, and I hope they would have some good things to say about me when I'm gone, and not just be like, it's definitely something I think about. So sometimes I try not to, but yeah. So as far as a movie goes, yeah, that's a tough one. I can't even think off the top of my head, but um, yeah, sorry.
And you're totally good. It's definitely one of the hardest questions I ask, and honestly, like describing it is sometimes better than the title. You know what I mean? So like, a lot of it has to do. When I ask that question, I like to give people to think about it. You know what I mean? Like in the spot, in the
I
moment.
think of the movie Basketball Diaries when it comes to mind. Now, I did not ever get caught up in heroin or anything the way that Leonardo DiCaprio did. Thank God. But never tried any of that stuff. But I always just think of how real and raw and brutal and emotional that movie is, and the scene with his mother and everything like that. I just thought was so well done and such an emotional movie, and it's just perfect.
So something akin to Basketball Diaries is probably more on the radar of what your title would be, but not that, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say, but yeah, something like that, I guess. Something sports related, and I don't know about my life. Somebody else in the chat, I mean, somebody who's watching that knows me is probably like, dude, this would be a perfect title for your life, and I can't even think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, let
So
us know down there.
I don't know. Some people would say I'm crazy, so that could be something, yeah.
Addicted, I'm crazy. Colon or something. There's something in there. Well, as I kind of wrap this thing up, I have one kind of last big question for you. That hopefully will encapsulate this entire thing. But if we're looking at like just the medium as a whole, how is this? The movies in general. Like how has this shaped your outlook on life and like how you interact with the world and how you interact with other people.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it like This Is Where I Leave You. That's another movie I love. It was recommended my friend. And sometimes I'll watch a movie and it's This Is Where I Leave You. I love it. It's not like the best movie in the world
No,
by any
I
means.
like it a lot too. Yep.
Yeah, and it just watching sometimes it's when you watch a movie, excuse me, but I realized in that moment, like when the credits rolled, I was like, this is a reminder of why I love movies. For some reason, that Peanut Butter Falcon, I'll always go back to being one of my favorite films of all time. The credits rolled, and I sat there, and that movie. That's what I was saying in the beginning of this. Like movies have the power to inspire you and change you, and I think Scream touched on it. Like movies don't create psychos. Psychos make or movies. Psychos don't. I don't know what he says. Movies don't make psychos. Psychos make movies more creative. But I believe that's what the line is. But I think Wes Craven was touching on something there. Like, don't blame the movies, but at the same time, I think movies definitely have the power to inspire and impact, whether good or bad. Unfortunately, like look at Fast and Furious when that movie came out. Everybody wants to crap on that franchise, but when that came out, I remember my mom telling me there's been so many people getting arrested for street racing. So that movie had a huge impact. But I always try to go the opposite way. A movie like The Warrior, Warrior, not The Warrior, sorry, Warrior from I think 2011 with the UFC and the two brothers fighting. Like movies like that, I'll watch that before I got some big race or big event where I need to feel inspired. So I think movies have had the power to help me learn and grow as a person too. And that's why it's not like it's not always just school or music or anything. It could be any outlet that helps you want to grow as a man. And I always think I can improve as a brother. I got two sisters, a son, you know what I mean? And I think movies have taught me, and even through talking to friends, but relationships. And that doesn't just have to be dating or anything like that. You can learn a lot through movies and watching things like that. Now, some movies are cheesy and all that stuff, but I haven't touched on this, but father-son relationships mean the most to me in movies. That's what always
They
means
do
the
mean
most.
they mean a lot to me too. So
Yeah. Like I can only imagine there's an incredible father-son moment in that. There's so many good scenes, father-son moments in movies, but that always teaches me there's a moment where, and I can only imagine, he says it's kind of like a Christian movie. It's based on a true story about the band I Can Only Imagine. But the father-son moment, his father's abusive and terrible person, and in the middle of the movie, his father, like little spoiler alert, but it's in the trailer pretty much, I believe. It's a spoiler here, but his father does pass, and he says, like, he writes a song about his struggles and stuff and with his dad, and he says, I watched God turn the man I hated into the man I wanted to become, and I didn't get the time I wanted. So he goes back to visit his dad to help like write his song and stuff like that. But it's emotional, and like that's just one of many, many, many father-son moments in movies. And some might be a father-daughter moment for some people, or mother-son, mother-daughter. For me, it's always been father-son, but I'm close to my mom too, but I was always looked up to my dad. Everything I did, I was like, I wanted to be like him and all that stuff. So it's always meant the world to me. And yeah, I think I can learn a lot from movies, and just even Dear John, the scene in the hospital with his dad is another one. To get corny and talk about a Nicholas Sparks movie, sure, but that's got an incredible father-son moment in it. And I think you can learn a lot from movies. And I think directors are trying to tell us that, take something away. I always like when somebody could watch a movie, and if I were to write a movie, okay, if I were to direct a movie, at one point I almost went to school, college, to be a pastor, to be honest with you, and everything changed. So I got a whole story, but anyways, um I always believed if I'm going to end a sermon, or if I'm going to end my movie, I want to leave my viewers with something, the people that are there watching, a question that they can't forget, something, a takeaway that just sticks with them for the rest of that week, or something that feel you feel convicted. And I watch movies where I feel convicted, and whether that be an addiction movie or whatever. And sometimes you're just like, it just rings with you. You can't forget that movie. And that is what I love about movies, when you can walk away and you're like, wow. Peanut Butter Falcon did that to me. Really, just the relationships and everything about that movie, just I was emotional after watching that. But there's a lot. Disconnect is another one. And there's a lot of other ones where you just, Men of Honor. Oh my God, that has the power to inspire. Are you kidding me? I mean, he's like, why do you want to be the best? You know, and it's just like, or he asks, what did your dad tell you? And he's like, to be the best and not give up. It's so good. Like, Men of Honor is a perfect movie, in my opinion. It's one of my favorites of all time. So I hope that answered your question.
oh yeah, oh it did. And I was gonna say this has been an amazing time, man. And so I was gonna say before we kind of wrap this up and tail everything, I kind of wanted to leave you with the final words. What do you have any final kind of thoughts on this whole thing?
Honestly, yeah, this was awesome, man. I love doing conversations, but sometimes it's let's just keep it movie related, which is absolutely fine. There's a lot of people in the community, let's just talk movies and keep it there. And I always felt like this was the first time on YouTube where I've been able to talk about some personal things. Like, I've always talked about bullying, but I've never opened up about addiction. And it gave me the inspiration to be able to do it on my own channel now. And it was something I always wrestled with, like, are people going to tune in? Do people want to hear me talk about my past? And I'm like, you know what? It's my channel and I'll do it. And I'll relate it and carry it to movies so it stays movie related. But this was awesome. And I want to say, like, and I'm straight up. I'm not going to like sugarcoat things. If I think somebody isn't a good host, I'm going to tell them. Like, maybe I won't. I just won't say anything. But I thought you were incredible, man. This was incredible. You keep the conversation going. So, but your questions and the way you're able to get the most out of your viewer and your guest, which is me in this case, it was incredible, honestly. So anybody watching, like, this, he's good. This was really good. But you really kept me engaged. Like, I'm not bored. I always think of this in a movie. Am I looking at my phone? Am I bored? Am I thinking of other things? Sometimes you could get so lost in a movie where you just forget about everything in that moment for an hour and a half. And sometimes I'll click pause and I'm like, no, it's almost over. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
this is almost like how this is, oh, it's almost over, 2 minutes or whatever left. And so I really appreciate this. I thought you brought something out of me that I didn't know I'm comfortable talking about on YouTube. So it's awesome, and it's awesome to be able to feel comfortable and go into some deeper conversations that I've never had. And I hope somebody out there gets something out of this. And if anybody out there has ever struggled with addiction or is, feel free to DM me, reach out, things like that. There's always a place, and sometimes it's hard to talk about it or open up about it, but I'm always an open book. I'm never going to lie about something. If somebody's got a question for me, I'll tell the truth.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you coming on. Didn't do this film journey, and be a part of this conversation, but also just be yourself, man. And that's at the end of the day, that's what matters. So, and I hope everyone who's watching this too can take something away from it, and hopefully enjoyed the conversation. Feel free to let us know in the comment section. Where can everyone find you, Bob?
Bob's Blu-rays. It's BOBS space Blu-rays on YouTube. So pretty simple. But yeah, I'm trying to put out more content, but the live streams are where it's at for me right now. Instagram's the same thing. I think it's Bob's_Blu-rays. I'm on there daily. I live on Instagram, I swear. So, but I love YouTube as a platform. I love this community. It's meant the world to me. I've talked about that, like talking about inspiration. I mean, I've met some of my favorite friends, some people that mean the world to me that I have deeper conversations with than anybody I know out here. And so I'm so grateful for the people I've met in this community. If you're watching and you know who I am, you probably mean something to me in a special way. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Bob, and joining me on this conversation. So everyone who's watching, put all that stuff in the description down below. Feel free to give it a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.